and sisters, welcome back and thank you for joining us for one of the most, I think, beneficial and very important aspects of my Muslim family, and that is our very important Q&A that we have. It's been a while since we last saw you, or since you last saw us. We've been really busy behind the scenes getting all the courses, all the series sorted out for you. Inshallah, we have some very important new content coming out, very beneficial new content coming out. And as you know, you've been staying in touch with us. You've been asking some of your questions. So we thought it's been a while, and it's well overdue that we can actually now start to address those again. Now, we have had recently two very important guests who have been helping us out with our Q&A, and in our beloved Shaykh Shaqur Rahman, who he has been with us quite a while now, quite a few Q&As. He's going to answer some of your questions today, inshallah. So without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time. Let me first of all introduce him or bring him on for you. Sheikh, assalamu alaikum tala.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, before we start, let's find out what you've been up to apart from sorting out issues with your laptop today. What you been up to?
Alhamdulillah, just the usual teaching, dealing with some marriage issues as we normally do.
Yeah.
Kids, and then obviously going to some of these protests and trying to do something for our brothers and sisters in Palestine.
Yeah.
So those are the main things we've been up to.
Yes, subhanallah. Very, very trying times. It's been really difficult time for many people experiencing, witnessing what's been taking place. So inshallah, maybe towards the end of today, you can maybe give us some words of encouragement of what we can do as families. Very importantly, my Muslim family. I think that would also, really help us a lot. I think, inshallah.
Definitely.
Great stuff. So what I'm going to do then, I'm going to go into our first question. And the question is, Bismillah. I have been married for many years and have 3 young children with my husband. My husband has failed to financially provide. I was asked to spend my own money whilst I worked part-time and also throughout maternity leave. I have had this conversation with him many times, and although I have hardly any money left, he refuses to talk about it. He also promised that we shall move out of his parents' home before our first child, as I was not treated well and he stood up for me. I observed the hijab, but his brothers also live in the same house. In the past, he has delayed the move on many occasions due to various excuses. However, this time he is saying that we will move out, but not right away. I have never felt at peace with him. I feel mentally distraught. There are many other issues too, but I don't want to jeopardize my Jannah due to my husband's displeasure. Therefore, the question is it better to divorce in this situation or continue to fight for my rights, well-being and peace by doing things against his wishes but make me happy and able to live with him, i.e. stay married but work for my financial independence, see my friends and family and attend Islamic talks and events? That's the question.
Okay, alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah amma ba'd. Unfortunately, this now is becoming much more common than it used to be. In the past, it was very clear, and the Muslim man or the Muslim boy would grow up understanding that his responsibility is to his family. And at a very young age, the Muslim boy, and even the non-Muslim actually, if we go back to the 1950s, 1960s, etc., they would know that they need to be the breadwinner, bring in money for the family, support the family, and maintain the family. Just as Allah said, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. That men are the caretakers of their women folk with that which Allah has preferred them with, and then with that which they spend on their families. So this was a known principle, and this is Islamically something that is obligated on the man because a woman, what she wants out of the marriage primarily is that security and stability that she will not feel unless he's providing for her. So when the sister says, I'm suffering in my mental health, in my emotional health, etc., it's clearly going to be the case because Allah legislated something to maintain the couple and maintain the family. And from what she described, if this is the case, then obviously the husband is not fulfilling that role, and therefore the knock-on effect or the consequence is very clear that the woman will not feel secure, will not feel the stability that she is looking for from the marriage. Okay, so that said, so it should be clear: any husband who is not providing for his wife, and providing for the wife is more than just the roof over her head. It includes giving her some money for spending on the necessary items for herself, for the children, and taking care of those issues, and not just relying on the as many have to, just relying on the benefits, and even keeping the benefits to himself, rather giving her enough to cover the expenditure, rather than taking money from the wife, from her own earnings or her own savings. Then it's going to cause problems, and he would not be fulfilling his role as a husband. So clearly, she's in a position where, if this is the case, there's oppression taking place upon her. Now, the sister, she described the situation that she doesn't want to sacrifice her Jannah. She's been exercising patience, and from what she said, what she described, he promised to move out after the first child, or when the first child was born, or something like that. And now she's got 3 children with him. Okay, so may Allah reward her for her patience. May Allah reward her greatly for her perseverance. It's a very good way to look at things, being able to persevere because there's something greater in life that you want, Jannah, rather than the material well-being, or just being happier in one's dunyawi life. At the same time, if the woman is not being provided for at all, she has every right to ask for the marriage to come to an end. Okay, she has every right. So if she wanted to do that, she would take her case to an Islamic council, a Sharia council, and a very something well known, a council that is reputable and has thorough procedures, like the Islamic Council that I am part of. And she would put her case forward for a khul'ah after telling her husband, you know what, either you start maintaining me, or I'm going to apply for a khul'ah. So giving him that ultimatum that either start doing it, or you know what, I'm finished with the marriage, if she wanted to end the marriage. Here, the complication is she's got 3 kids. And with 3 children, and it seems like they're still quite young, although it wasn't specifically stated, it seems like some of them are young. In this case, a woman needs to understand that she'll never be free of any husband, even if she divorces him, because they have children together. So there would always be some kind of connection, even if it is the bare minimum of co-parenting and arrangements for that co-parenting to happen. The question, the way it was phrased, which is better for her? Now, this question becomes very difficult to answer without knowing all of the specifics from both sides. So anyone who asks about the situation, we would normally make sure they come into an appointment where both husband and wife are present, establish the facts of what's happened, and where the oppression is, and who's doing the oppression and how much. So we're clear of the facts. So this becomes more of a judgment, and you can't do that with a one-sided story. no matter how sincere the person is, because perceptions will always cloud the way one describes the situation. And perceptions are not the same as facts. So now, when she asks the question, which is better for her? Now, better for her in the comprehensive sense means that she doesn't jeopardize her rewards with Allah, her Jannah, that she looks at the complete package of what will happen to the children, knowing that children who grow up from a broken family, no matter how good the co-parenting is, suffer from the trauma of the breakup and are more prone to emotional problems, psychological problems, addictions, etc., crime, and everything else that comes with it. So, looking at the whole package like that, and knowing that the people who are going to suffer the consequences of this decision are her children, primarily, her and her children. No one else would like to make that decision on her behalf. Okay? So normally in these types of cases, we say consult the members of your family that are close to you and that you can trust, who will give you the best advice, or bring it to the Sharia council with the whole, with the husband, and then they go through it and get the advice from the different parties, your family, especially the male members of your family, the Sharia council. Take all of that into consideration. A group of senior males and females who are much older than you, much more life experience than you, present to them what everyone has said to you. And then get them to help you make a decision, knowing that you are the one who's going to face the consequences of that decision, no one else. So you have to be willing to accept whatever consequences come with that decision. So some sisters come to the point where, you know what, enough is enough. I can't tolerate him anymore. I've started to hate him. There's no way I can find it within myself to try anymore. If you got to that point, then it's quite straightforward. That kind of sister will say, enough is enough, and anything is better than this. I know it's going to be difficult. Most of the time, looking after my kids by myself, and he takes them only at certain times, etc. But that for me is a breath of fresh air, and I can't do this anymore. So that kind of person is easy to make that decision. If you're not in that boat, there's no easy decision to make. Everything comes with difficulty and hardship. You're just weighing up which is less hardship on you, mentally and physically and financially and everything else, which is less hardship and which minimizes the harm to you and your children more so than the other decision. So far, it looks like the sister has always looked at the well-being of her children, the well-being of her akhirah, and stayed and persevered in the marriage. That level of patience does obviously wear out. If she can have that patience, if she can persevere, even if she can, she should still try and work on her husband by herself, people who have influence over him, trying to get him to mix with better Muslim men who have a better attitude towards their wives, their spouses. She should encourage him about the move out that he agreed to. She shouldn't just give up everything. Keep trying if she still has some patience in her. But when the patience wears out, then the recourse will be an Islamic Sharia council. And after she's presented it to her husband, either there's change or I'm going to apply for a khul'at to end the marriage, or she asks him for divorce. And Allah knows best.
Sheikh, Jazakallah khair. A lot of things to unpack within that question. We won't sort of do too much regarding that, but I found that your answer to be very fair, because I think a lot of times sisters find themselves in a situation where they feel they don't have any hope, which obviously is not allowed to have no hope in Islam anyway. But within their marriage, they feel like, well, what have I got? What choices have I got? And I think you laid that out really well. Um, some might ask, for example, okay, I'm willing to go as far as asking for a khula, but based on your suggestion, your wise suggestion, then obviously, yes, I will have that sabr and that patience because of the children. But then, how about withholding on certain things, where it changes the tables around a little bit, where now he comes to me and he starts making demands, or feel that there's a lack of something on his side, then that would maybe give more leverage to sit down and discuss it. Is that something that's available as an option, or you know?
Yeah. Now, the sister was very concerned about her akhirah.
Yes.
So a sister like that, in that scenario, she's still in a nikah. So what happens, and this, we see it a lot in cases. The sister says, right, he's not providing for me financially and emotionally. That connection is broken, and is so far that when he approaches me for marital relations, for instance, there's no way I'm going to entertain that because he's not giving me my rights. Okay, on a theoretical level in the West, that looks like tit for tat. Okay, but Islamically, it's not. So the Sharia looks at this issue as paramount, and there's severe chastisement on the woman if she's in a nikah for refusing her husband. So that side of it, because the sister is very concerned about her akhirah, there's no way someone can say to her, do that, because if she did that, the threat of the la'na from the angels and Allah's curse on her until the next morning, and having that going against her, is not something that such a person would want, nor should anyone advise her to do that. At the same time, she has to have that serious conversation. Right, you know what, you're not providing, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, so why should I be happy with you? Why should I, saying it to him,
Mm-hmm.
there's no problem with that. Why should I entertain intimacy with you? Because you're not providing, you're not doing your part as a husband. That's why I don't want to do this. Expressing that is perfectly fine. And she should do that if it's been so long and he's not pulling his weight as a husband. And they need to have those serious conversations. But for her to completely blanket refuse because he's not playing his part, that will be problematic for her and sinful for her, until she says, you know what, it's not happening, I'm applying for a khula because I can't do this anymore. Until she does that, while they're still married, she'll be sinful for refusing him. Right, other things, for instance, other things which are not as clear cut. Right, for instance, you have, because she's in the extended family home, okay, in-laws, she's living with them. I'm not going to go out of my way to serve your whole family when they come over because you're not doing anything and I'm overburdened, etc. Saying those types of things and trying to use that as leverage can work. Most of the time doesn't work and just makes the relationship more sour, and then it just drives it to an earlier end than normal. The way to approach this issue, have those serious conversations between yourselves. If it doesn't work, the couple can't have those conversations and come to some joint agreement which they're both happy to work with, then say to the husband that, right, you know what, this is not happening like this. Either we go and have some counseling where we have an objective third party looking at it and advising us, or I've had enough. And here she might not even want to finish the marriage, but she's had enough of the way it is. Okay, so something has to change. So here what she's effectively doing is putting in that ultimatum, right, something has to change, and if it's not going to change, I'm warning you, husband, I'm going to apply for the khul'a, which understand that that could mean the family breaks up completely. Sometimes a woman has to do that to force her husband to the table of a counseling session. Okay, not the best way to do it, but sometimes a woman has no option except that. The husband really, if a wife says, you know what, we need counseling, we need someone to give us objective advice, Islamic advice, it would be in the Islamic system, she's asking him to go, yani, for Islah. There's no problem with that. He should never refuse her. Islamically, he should never refuse that. Let alone if she was to take him to court. He can't refuse. If she goes to the Islamic judge, then he has no right to refuse because she's made an application and the judge would be able to enforce it. He would have to come. So in both scenarios, there's no way he should not go. There's only one option. He goes to these things. But unfortunately, we know the situation that we live in. Many husbands feel embarrassed. Many husbands see it as washing their laundry in public, and they have such aversion to it, and they think yani, all negative thoughts about it, and that they're going to be oppressed, etc., etc., and so they refuse to go. So when the sisters got to a point that, you know what, and it sounds like when she's asking this question, it does sound like, you know what, she's had enough of it going on and on and on like this. So she wants a change. So try first, I would suggest to her, step one, have that serious conversation to him and make it very clear. Something has to change, or I'm heading for asking for the marriage to come to an end. If nothing changes, try it once more, try it the third time. After the third time, nothing changes, then actually make an application to see if that forces his hand to make the changes. If it doesn't force him into a counseling session and to make some changes, then actually follow through the process of a khul'a and look at and prepare for the consequences of the marriage coming to an end. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. MashaAllah. That's excellent. So, I think there's a lot in there, alhamdulillah. So, for many sisters, in the same situation, a lot you can benefit from those answers, inshallah. So, may it be of a good benefit to you. So, the next question, it's from another sister. So these questions are from our members. We do have some from non-members of my Muslim family network as well. So inshallah, we can try and get as many in as possible. Next question is, we have been married for years, but my husband constantly accuses me of flirting with and having affairs with men from all walks of life, from imams to work colleagues and even people we pass by, such as bus drivers. These accusations are becoming too much to bear. Despite everything he accuses me of, he often laughs and jokes with female colleagues and other women, even in front of me. He already gave me one divorce because I spoke to an old family friend at work when my sibling died, and I was very upset. I've apologized for this many times, but he still brings it up. He won't agree to counseling, but once an imam rang him, but he made up with a lot of lies, which seemed plausible. The imam advised me to get a khula. Is there anything I can do other than divorce?
Okay. Now, when this is happening between a couple, normally, in many cases, there's a problem with their bedroom relationship. Okay? In many cases, the husband has an issue with performing in the intimate relation side of things. And saying these things is like a cover for his inability to perform as a husband should be able to. So this side needs to be looked at, right? Is there an issue there? He has an issue, and that's the source of it because he's not willing to deal with his issue that has been going on. Sometimes there's psychological issues that, or mental health issues that the husband is facing and a type of paranoia that the husband has as well. If there's no substance to these claims of his, so that sometimes needs to be looked at as well. Sometimes it could be that in a less problematic scenario where there's no illnesses there. It could just be that the boundaries between them and how they interact with the opposite sex have not been agreed upon, and each one has different expectations, and therefore, whenever their own expectations are not being met, even though the other party may not even know those expectations, when they're not being met, they will make accusations. So these three things need to be ruled out first. Okay? Once you rule these three things out, if none of these apply to your case, then you need to take it to a third party, right, and have that conversation where both of you are present in a counseling session. So the facts of the case, who's doing what, is there any suspicion that is brought about by those circumstances, by those situations, for someone to be justified to have those thoughts and to make those statements. And then they would be able to give you that advice of how to move forward. Now, without both people present and without going through it and taking it at face value, he lies. He makes up claims. Taking it at face value like this, then clearly there is an insecurity that he has, and that must come from some mental health issue that he has, or some physical ailment that he has. Okay, so that's why I started off with the cases that the man has a problem in performing in the intimacy side of the relationship, and that's why he makes these claims. Okay, now obviously no woman can or should be putting up with these accusations at all, or completely fabricated fabricated accusations always being thrown at her. In fact, to accuse a believing woman of adultery without having proof is a punishable punishable crime in the Sharia. It's a massive thing. It's not something simple. Someone making the accusation and not bringing 4 witnesses in a Sharia system would be punished with the penal system, penal code, and a physical punishment. So this is major. So if, sister, this doesn't stop, if you can't bring it to a stop through counseling, through some kind of therapy, through maybe some medication and medical assistance to this, to your husband, etc. And especially, no kids are mentioned in this scenario. No children were mentioned. If there's no children, and this has been going on for a long time, and it's not stopping, and the person's not dealing with the problem, not taking it seriously, rather covering up for it, then with this scenario, no children, it's been going on for a long time, it's become unbearable, and the husband is not willing to deal with it appropriately through counseling and therapy and medication if that's required, then it would be very appropriate for the sister to call it a day and ask for a divorce, whether from the husband or going through the khula process.
MashaAllah, Sheikh. Alhamdulillah. Again, you've left so much to unpack there on these answers, subhanAllah. I think this one was pretty, obviously, very clear, and there might be a lot more questions that might arise from that. I mean, I think what would I have said? Maybe I would have asked again on top of that, would it have been, is there anything else you might have been able to do in terms of perhaps reassure him? Is that, of course, it may be something she's already done, but she didn't mention that in the question. Maybe there are other ways that she could explore, sort of, to reassure him to, that might maybe put his mind at rest. As you mentioned, obviously there could be health, medical issues, and clinical issues. But yeah, perhaps there is a little.
Yeah, reassuring him If there is a bedroom problem, she could be reassuring in the sense that, look, these things happen. Yani physical ailments and mental ailments, they do happen. It's part of life, and marriage is about getting through these things. But you have to work with me to get through it. So let's work on the issue. So yeah, definitely those discussions need to happen. But when a sister has seen that, yeah, there's an issue, and many times they you know, especially in Asian cultures, and actually, I was listening to non-Muslims talking about these types of the bedroom issues, intimacy, etc., and problems. There is a shame, which is as it should be. There's a shame attached to it, and it makes it a difficult subject to talk about between couples, even. So that should be there. There should be a shame to it, but at the same time, those difficult conversations need to be had. And if the husband is not willing to have them and then work on fixing those problems, that's when the sister's going to have no choice. If the husband has a problem, has an ailment, and is willing to work, great. You work with the husband and try to fix things. Okay, that should always be the case, because that's what marriage is about. You know, you face challenges, you get through them together. Ups and downs in life, physical health and mental health, etc., they happen. And as long as the person's willing to work, it's perfectly fine. You know, you work with them and get through. It's when there's no effort and there's just blame, that is unjust. And the Sharia has come to remove injustice. And if that is the case, which it appears from the question, and that's why I said, you know, answering a question like this without having both parties in front of you, being able to ascertain the facts from both people's perceptions and stories and narratives, is very difficult. You know, it's very difficult, and we have to be very careful. That's why I'm trying to give a process in how to deal with it for the sister, rather than any blanket answers. But if that's how you feel, sister, speak to your husband first. If that doesn't get anywhere to fixing this issue, then bring in a third party, an objective third party, and then if that doesn't work, then you apply for a khul'a and take it down that route, inshallah. May Allah make it easy.
I mean, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So now we've got a couple of questions from some people who have not signed up to My Muslim Family yet. We hope that anyone watching now and you haven't signed up, please make sure that you do. MyMuslimFamily.com is written on the bottom there. You know, sign up, inshallah. There's so much beneficial content on there, courses, series, and much more we're having as well. So yeah, inshallah, make sure you do. So this question from a non-member. I have been married for 5 years and have 2 kids, but my wife does not get on well with my parents. About 2 years ago, on the delivery of our second child, she went to her parents' house and has not returned. She insisted that I should come and take her home, but I refused because she makes me feel guilty by repeatedly complaining about my parents. I, along with my parents, visited her a year ago to clear the air, but it turned into an ugly situation of blame games. About a year into our marriage, my wife was very concerned due to problems while breastfeeding our baby. My wife is very sensitive and emotional. Her parents sent a religious-looking person who recited some verses on her using a knife. She was not surprised at all, indicating that she must possibly be going through this before marriage. Okay, she suddenly fell down on the arrival of this person and started crying profusely and sweating. Also, her cousin, whom she visits regularly, is suffering from schizophrenia. I believe that apart from some minor issues, there is no fault on any part of my parents. None of the many neutral mediators pointed out any fault on my side. They were only concerned regarding the future of our kids. Lastly, I am not comfortable with the idea of separate accommodation for my wife, as that would not be justice with my parents and myself. Question: how should I approach this issue? Is there a link between the knife incident and the insecurity that my wife feels to my parents?
Okay, right. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
Right now, the the person coming in to do ruqya, la
With a
ilaha
knife.
illallah, with a knife, okay, that's a very weird ruqya kind of setup. So let's be very clear about that. It's a very weird and strange and dangerous type of scenario. Most people who do ruqya, who work in a clinic, for example, and have procedures and are reputable, they will not have anything like this. It will be, even if it's in a person's, the patient's home, they will not be doing that. There might be some holes or some touching of the person to some extent with the mahrams present, but this sounds very strange. So I would first say the ruqya issue, go to a reputable clinic that is well known and established for ruqya, and have her checked out for some jinn issues or magic issues, etc. So take that side of it, because it could be something like that. But as one of the experts and one of the most senior mashayikh in the ruqya in London, at the very least, if not the UK, someone I trust the most in this field, Sheikh Abu Hanifa. Once I remember he said that most of these people who claim this have mental health issues, and they just react because they believe they should react. Okay, so but really, he analyzes them and he finds they have mental health issues. And since there's some family members who have mental health issues, that also needs to be explored and taken seriously. So that's one side of it. Now, the brother has two children with his wife. His wife is living away, and there's issues with her parents, etc. Now, brother, you're always going to have these problems, even if the parents have done nothing wrong, because there seems to be some spiritual or some medical issue which are underlying the whole problem. Your wife is never going to be completely settled with your parents. So you need to look at, can you sustain a family in your own accommodation rather than living with your parents? Because trying to live with your parents, with your wife like she is going to be a nightmare for you. Okay, the headache will not be worth it. Okay, it will stress you, it will stress your parents, it will create great animosity between your wife and your parents, and for you, it will be constant turmoil, grief, arguments that you have to sort out. And really, you'll be looking at it like there's nothing actually in this. Why am I wasting my time? And it will really drag you down. So that's one side of it. You also need to think about, if your wife doesn't want to go through treatment, how you are going to work in that scenario if she doesn't believe that she has any issues, and she doesn't want to work with that, and she doesn't want to take a specific process in dealing with it, a thorough process in dealing with it. You need to think about, right, are you willing to work on the marriage in that kind of state? So at the moment, work and see where this goes, but have it in your mind, look, if she doesn't get on board, and you can't live together, if you can't live together, then that's not a marriage. Okay, that's not a marriage. A marriage is when you live together and you're meant to be living together. Islamically, even if you divorce a wife, you're meant to live together even until the iddah period comes to an end. So living apart is not going to allow you to have a marriage, which is a very dangerous position for you to be in, and very problematic for your children. So you need to start looking at and having it in your mind, you know what? If we can't find a way to get back together and live together and have a proper family life, then at some point I'm going to have to think about bringing the marriage to an end, and then just doing the co-parenting from a distance, even though I know that my children are going to suffer to some extent with that relationship. But in the long term, when you're looking at the whole scenario, it's not going to be a marriage until you can live together. So if you have the means to live together by yourselves without your parents, you try that first so that you see how that works. At the same time, you're doing all of the spiritual side of things and the medical side of things. You see how it pans out. But in your mind, you should be thinking, right, the objective is to be able to live together as a normal family, knowing that if we can't achieve that, then I'm going to have to really think about what happens to the marriage and maybe bring it to an end. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Let's quickly move on to another question from a non-member. My wife and I try to create a fun and Islamic household for our children. However, my parents live with me. My father constantly insults family members, activists, ulama of other sects who are still Sunni, and anyone else he has an issue with. He also constantly argues, "Is it difficult to have it is difficult to have our own quarters as a house is quite small. I have PTSD and my wife seems depressed lately. I want this cycle to stop and not affect our children. We have asked elders and ulama to get involved, but the actions have only gotten worse. Question, will I be sinful if I ask my father to move into one of his own properties?"
Okay, so the property that they're living in now is the brothers? Is
That
that
wasn't clear, unfortunately.
okay? So
Yeah.
let's take a couple of different scenarios, right? If you are living in your father's house, you can't obviously ask your father to leave his own house. That's
No.
just wrong. Okay, so if that's the case, it's the father's house and you're living there. Go and yani, follow the process to get your own place and have that your own space where you can make the decisions and run the house the way you want to run the house. You're never going to be able to change your father, or it's very difficult, near impossible, to change someone who's around 50, 60 years old, for instance, set in their ways, and this is the way they are. You as a child trying to tell them, you know what, Dad, it's not like this, open up a bit more, understand that they're all Muslims. Some people, or most people, who are parents and trying to convince them of that, realistically, it's not going to happen. Okay? They might tone it down a little bit, but if that's ingrained in them for years and years, it's very unlikely to change. So the best option that you have is you change your situation, take yourself, your wife, and your children out of that situation, and then you're free to arrange things for yourself. Realistically, that is your only solution to this type of problem, and Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And I think like even situations like that as well, like over a period of time, if it's driving you crazy, then obviously things don't happen overnight, right? So you always have to start the process. You mentioned like trying to seek alternative housing and stuff like that, and people
Yeah,
sometimes think like, that's gonna take forever. But you got to make a start somewhere, haven't you? And eventually
yeah.
you'll get there along the way.
Remember, you take the first step,
Yeah,
Allah opens up doors.
yeah,
But
absolutely,
if you're just going to wait for something to happen, then nothing's going to happen. But
absolutely.
Allah wants you to take the first step. Then Allah brings things your way. You have to do. As the Prophet ﷺ said, Ista'in billahi wa la ta'jaz. And seek Allah's aid and don't think you can't do something. You can always do something.
Absolutely, Jazakallah khair. So we're going to have a couple of like quick fire sort of questions. They're quite short questions again from some of our members. So the first one: how can I make my child love learning the Quran and Deen?
Quite simply, show how much you love Quran and the Deen. They're not going to love it until you love it. So if you show them this is the most important thing to you in your life, they see you constantly with the Quran. I think that clip was flying around. I think the young young brother was from Australia or something.
Mm.
He was asked the same question, and his answer was, you know what, the love that I saw from my grandfather and I saw from my mother of the Quran just made me just innately love the Quran and love the Deen. Then the other side of it is, show that we can have fun and still be good, orthodox, practicing Muslims. And make it a loving, fun environment. Do the fun things that are halal to do, and don't make life always serious and boring. Those two things, if you do those, as long as your children feel loved, they will love the things that you love, and Allah knows best.
Next question. How can I keep my child close when they reach the teenage years?
This is always a difficult one. This is when you have to change your behavior. You can't be that overbearing parent anymore. So very difficult for us fathers, more so than the mothers, because mothers are more friendly with the children, yani as a general norm. So they have that closer bond and that closer relationship. Making sure at the teenage years you give them the space to start learning to make decisions for themselves. So criticizing them less, and sitting back and being able to help them think through things is another way. When they can always come to you, when they feel that you're open, they're not going to get chastised for having an idea that maybe out there somewhere weird, something you never consider, and just talking through it very calmly. When they have that open parent that they can speak to on that level, it has a profound effect on them, because teenagers are going to make mistakes. Teenagers are going to go wrong. You try to give them the tools from the beginning, and those tools need to be refined at that point. And the worst thing you can do is to let them constantly be around other teenagers and not have elders that they mix with. If you can give them the surroundings where they have to mix with people who are older than them and elders in general, like yourself, and they see elders being good to them and having love for them, and they feel a part of that as well, that will keep them close to you. It's not just about you. Remember, you are that parent who's always in their face. They need to have others who are similar to you, but who are not you as well. So when they feel part of that clan, they will be much more likely to stick with you and feel close to you, and therefore come to you with their issues, rather than going to any friends of their age and then getting the wrong kind of advice. And Allah knows best.
Next question. Islamic schooling versus homeschooling. What should I consider when deciding between the two?
And you consider many things: your child, the way your child learns, what you can provide for them in terms of catering for the different skills that they require, the different subjects that they require. You can mix and match between the two sometimes. You get in help if you're homeschooling. You get other people to do certain parts, get together in a group, homeschooling like that. If you can, homeschooling is always better, if you can. But it's very difficult, and most of our communities can't do it. Yeah, most of our communities can't do it. You have some who are willing to put in the effort and have the means to do it as well. Most of our community, unfortunately, doesn't have that capacity or the means. That's why we are so reliant on the education system. To actually thrive as an ummah, we need to become self-sufficient, because the education system, with all its biases, with all its indoctrination right now, brings about so much negativity to our children as Muslims. It's unbelievable. So we're always fighting against the tide, and until we can have an alternative, a proper alternative for all of our community, we're always going to be fighting against the tide, and we need a different kind of system of schooling to actually be able to thrive as a Muslim family.
Mashallah. Final quick fire question from the members. What is the sunnah way to discipline a child?
Yeah, and the Sharia doesn't stipulate exactly how to reprimand a child. It gives you options, right? Speaking to the child, obviously, having a discussion with the child, being harsh with the child verbally. The Sharia says, yeah, you can reprimand with a strike that doesn't leave a mark and is not there to break the child or injure the child, but rather to reprimand. So these are all options, okay? And then, yeah, taking things away from the child that are privileges, these are all acceptable. But the Sharia doesn't say one size fits all, and it would never do that because each child is different.
Okay, great. Sheikh, now just a couple of quick fire questions from some non-members, and then we can wrap up soon, inshallah. So, first question is, what is a healthy amount of affection to show our spouses in front of children ages 3 to 15 to avoid falling in sin, but still show them how they should treat their spouses?
Okay, this is culturally sensitive as well as having the Islamic side of things. So anything actually sexual is not allowed to be manifested in front of your children. Actual sexual, so groping or anything that is a lead up to actual yani intimate relations, right? So any of that is not allowed sharan or in the Sharia. So a peck on the cheek, a hug, these things are dependent on cultural sensitivities more than the Sharia. Okay, the Sharia doesn't say you can't give your wife or your husband a peck on the cheek, nor does it say you can't hug your spouse in front of your children. So these kinds of things are allowed. And then different cultures have the kissing on the head, the kissing on the hand. These things are not sexual, they are affection. They're very light affection things. But culturally, we may have sensitivities and not like this to be done in front of the children. So that you need to discuss as a couple as well, so that the children are clear and you come to an agreement on these things. But Shara'an, nothing actually sexual can be shown in front of your children. Those respectful and loving things like a peck on the cheek, a kiss on the head or the hand, a hug, all of these things in the Sharia wise, they're fine. Okay. And then it's just down to your cultural sensitivities. And Allah knows best.
Alhamdulillah. And children know when their parents love each other as well. They pick
Yeah, they pick up on it.
many
Yeah.
different ways, isn't it? MashaAllah. Um, Last question from a non-member is: how should we talk to our children about what's going on in Gaza? So that's quite apt because we are going to end on that anyway.
We should be very clear that the occupiers are the apartheid Zionist state of Israel. We should be very clear that Israel is committing a genocide against the Palestinians right now. Their aim, as they have declared many times in many different forms, is to wipe out the Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank. We should be very clear that the Zionist agenda is to stop anyone speaking out against the Zionist apartheid state of Israel, and all the institutions that prevent Muslims from speaking out against this genocide that is taking place are all part of the Zionist narrative. We should be very clear that we as Muslims need to do whatever we can to help our brothers and sisters with the spoken word, with speaking to our friends, by passing, sharing things on social media, by standing up in the marches and protests, and doing anything we can to help when it comes to giving money to rebuild. That's an obligation upon us as an ummah, because the Palestinians are actually standing up for the whole ummah by resisting this genocide against them. So, in a nutshell, be very clear with your children and tell them that your schools that are not allowing you to speak, and the institutions that are not allowing you to wear simple badges to show your solidarity, these are all part and parcel of what the Zionist narrative is and has promoted. And those people who are doing these things and preventing us from expressing ourselves and our solidarity with that resistance are actually doing something evil. And those people who are sincere allow expression, allow speaking and discussion, and allowing people to express what they're feeling, no matter whether they agree or disagree with that. So, in a nutshell, that is what we should be telling our children, and we should be foremost in making dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine and showing our children by doing these things ourselves and taking our families with us when we do it. There's protests practically every week now, whether local or national. Take your families, take them. I did so with my family. It was such a blessed journey there, such a blessed event. It was a talking point for us as a whole family, going, coming, after, them looking forward to it. And we've been speaking about it since it happened. They've been with me when I've done khutab on it. And everyone knows where the Muslim position is on this issue. So that's the kind of approach that I've taken, and I advise our brothers and sisters and all of us to take, inshallah.
Sheikh, Jazakallah khair for that, mashallah. So before we go, just wanted to remind the viewers about the you did a series with My Muslim Family, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Remind us what that series was about, if you can remember.
That series was to do with Ramadan and all of the possible questions Muslim families could have pertaining to Ramadan and what happens in Ramadan, whether the fiqh of it, whether the practicalities of it, and a few other things as well.
Personally, I found it to be brilliant. I was there when you recorded it, and some really good answers to a lot of really common questions. Some questions not too common. Yeah, so that's available on mymuslimfamily.com. So brothers and sisters who are watching this now, make sure you sign up, inshallah, and get the benefits from that. And I use that word benefit a lot because it literally is a great benefit, subhanallah. Lots of different content there. So just you see the link down the bottom there. Make sure you have a look. Shaykh Shaqur, Jazakallah khair for that, and we're looking forward to having you back again over the next few weeks, inshallah, with many other questions. None of them are challenging for you. You seem to have it in the bag every time, mashallah. So Jazakallah khair for that. Looking
May
forward to
Allah
seeing
bless
you.
you all for setting
Ameen.
this up.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. So see you next time, inshallah, yeah?
Inshallah. Take
Take
care.
care. I need to assalamu alaikum to that. And brothers and
Alaikum salam.
sisters, inshallah. We'll see you again, possibly next week, inshallah. We'll make sure that you will be notified. Have your questions ready. But the most important thing is make sure you sign up to mymuslimfamily.com. It is very, very well worth it, inshallah. So until next time, take care, inshallah, and see you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.